Hey guys, welcome back to more homeowner association stories. In this video, a smug HOA idiot towed my tractor and claims that my farm violated the HOA bylaws despite me not being a member. Let's dive right into the story. For as long as I can remember, this small farm has been my home, passed down through generations, a place where the time seemed to stand still and I could recall all our family's memories throughout the years. But lately, things have not been as peaceful as they once were. It's because of the way I grew up, but I couldn't picture it. Life, and certainly couldn't picture a city life. I enjoyed this home and the old wood paneling walls that had been up since the 1980s. My brothers still lived at home with me and we still used some of our grandparents' vintage farm equipment. XYZ Estates, a shiny new development, was across the road from me. And by the way, Ripe Stars, I anonymized that name to not dox OP. Either way, now we are not right next to each other, but within walking distance. XYZ sits right at the frontage road, but my house is further back since I have a long gravel driveway. Now, everyone deserves to live how they want. If you want to live on a farm, go ahead. If you want to live in a manufactured, sparkly home, then you have the right to do that. But it is Eric, the president of the HOA of XYZ Estates, who really grinds my gears. He is a man who believes everything should fit into a perfect little box, especially when it comes to appearances. When XYZ was first being built, the boundary line near my driveway, however, they had gotten the approval to build more homes across the street, meaning next to my property. Now I obviously had my own property line, and now I was getting uncomfortable though because the boundary line was getting closer to my driveway. Tensions between my family and Eric were rising because he was making it clear that he did not like the visuals of our farm nor my property. One day, he pulled up in our driveway in his fancy BMW. He said that we should pave our driveway and clean up the weeds around our property. Now, we do keep maintenance on our farm. I mean, we got the equipment for it, a riding lawnmower, the tractor, etc. But people must understand that old houses and farms were not gonna look necessarily clean or polished. It is that old farmhouse charm, and I love it. He even sent us a letter in the mail from the official XYZ HOA asking that to keep up with the maintenance of XYZ, the messiness and disorganization of our farm should be considered. I always ignored those because what was he gonna do? There should not have been approval for the expansion of XYZ if they were so concerned about their image. Anyway, one day that all changed. I had been actively running errands all day and was relieved to come home. I did not expect much when I pulled into the driveway, just the usual to come home and relax for the night. I guess no one can really anticipate or guess what was about to happen. As soon as I saw the empty spot where my tractor should have been, my stomach dropped. It might sound silly, but it was a cherished piece of equipment. I thought my brother would use it and just park it somewhere else, like behind our house or beside the big shed we had, which would not be visible from where I parked in the driveway. I then walked to the barn, hoping for some answer, some sign that it had not vanished into thin air. That is when I saw it. A bright orange sticker plastered across the shed door, practically glowing in the fading light of day. It said, "Vehicle towed. Violation of XYZ Estates HOA bylaws. Unapproved vehicle, visual plight." My blood was boiling. My grandfather had busted his butt to buy that tractor. I still remember when he did. I was just a child and it was used for several decades and would last for several more. It was not just a piece of machinery, it was a part of the land, a part of our family. And here was this Eric guy, no doubt behind this, using his HOA to bully me off of my own property. I was not part of his little community, let's get this right. This land was ours, had been for generations. He had no right to touch it, let alone tow my tractor. The next morning I went straight to business in confronting Eric and his stupid HOA. I walked over to the HOA office first thing in the morning, and wouldn't you know it, Eric was right there behind the office desk. Eric was standing behind the desk, that smug look on his face like he knew something that I didn't. The man had the audacity to greet me with a smile, his perfectly manicured hand reaching out as if this was some sort of social call or business meeting. When I ignored his attempt at a handshake, he spoke up. The tractor, right? I'm afraid you have violated several of our community's very clear and very reasonable guidelines." He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms as if he were about to lecture me on HOA policies and procedures. You know, an HOA that I was not even a part of. I was not gonna let him bully me. It is not your property, man. You have no right to tow my tractor, and you don't even have the right to step foot on my property. I want my tractor back, and you're gonna get it back to me. Well, it's not my property, but it was parked on HOA property, so it's a completely valid violation. Besides, I'm not surprised that someone like you cannot appreciate the beauty of following the rules or a nice presentation. You know, that thing looked like junk you find at the junkyard, he said, his voice raising slightly as he looked at me up and down. I knew that he was judging me. I opened my mouth to say something, but he shuffled around the desk and slided me a piece of paper across the counter. Here, I hope you got some savings because it will cost a pretty penny for you to get it back. It is at the tow yard in the center of town, he said, flashing me a smile. I was trying my best not to show my frustration, but it was getting harder and harder. I did not want to give him that satisfaction. You've got to be kidding me, I said, more so to myself than to him. The tractor had been sitting on our property for almost 2 decades. How did I end up in this situation? I assure you I'm not, Eric said, eyes glinting with the same smug superiority. It's all in the bylaws. You will need to pay the towing and impound fees if you want your tractor back. Unless, of course, you would prefer to keep arguing, in which case you're gonna waste your time arguing. Have you ever considered selling that junkyard of a house you have? It would make for so much room and amenities in our HOA. He gave me a pointed look, clearly enjoying every second of my frustration. I turned around and started walking out of the office. The rage that was building inside of me felt like my blood was boiling. As I walked through the door, I heard him shout, "By the way, you have about 30 days to get your tractor, or it will be taken to a scrapyard." I stomped back to my house, resembling a little kid throwing a tantrum to anyone who looked at me. I didn't care though. I was not gonna pay him, the tow yard, the HOA, or anyone else to get my tractor back. Once home, I sat down to talk to my brother about what we could do. My brother said that he knew a lawyer that could potentially help us out. We called him right away and decided to set up an appointment for the very next day. I was determined to get that tractor back, and I did not want to wait until the last minute and risk not getting it back. So the next morning, we headed over to the lawyer's office. If we're being honest, I was a little nervous. For what? I'm not sure. I mean, there was no way that what Eric and the HOA had done could be legal in any way. There's a county ordinance, the lawyer said, that allows property owners to impound vehicles that are parked illegally on their land. However, with the blueprints and documents you gave me, you can clearly see that the HOA property line for the XYZ residence's neighborhood runs adjacent to yours. They don't cross. So if you proceed with a lawsuit, then chances are it is in your favor. Now, on the phone, you mentioned something about the HOA president parking in front of your driveway or a house sometimes, correct? I guess when my brother called, he had bombarded him with as much info as he could, which I guess was a good thing because we had documentation and everything that looked like the outcome would favor us. While my brother and the lawyer chatted, a plan was brewing in my head. I could hardly believe what I was hearing, but the more the lawyer explained, the clearer it became. Eric had overstepped and I was not about to let him get away with it. I now had a legal weapon to strike back. I was gonna do to him what he did to me. Was it petty? Absolutely. Would I get bad karma for this? I don't think so. In fact, it was just Eric getting his own revenge. Over the next week, I took careful note of his parking habits, every single illegal move, every violation. There was the time he parked across the sidewalk to avoid crowded streets, blocking the path for pedestrians, and then there was of course his BMW, parked in the fire lane just outside his house, as if the rules did not apply to him. And the kicker? The day his wife's SUV parked halfway in front of someone's mailbox, completely obstructing it. His whole family was entitled and posh. Can't say I was surprised. I documented every single infraction, snapping photos and taking meticulous notes. This was no longer about just getting my tractor back, it was about sending a message. Eric was gonna learn that just because he had nice things and a rich image didn't mean that he was invincible and could treat people like garbage because they didn't look like him and his wealth. Every time his car was impounded or towed, I made it a point to leave a big note where the car once was, along with a copy of the city ordinance on illegally parked cars. The note read, "Improving the neighborhood aesthetic, one illegally parked vehicle at a time." After about 2 weeks, Eric showed up at my doorstep. I was honestly prepared for a fight or some nasty words being thrown, but I was surprised at what transpired next. "Listen, can we put all this behind us? The other HOA board members are starting to look at me funny. And my wife's car? She doesn't have anything to do with this." I nodded, "Okay. Pay the fees to get my tractor back and I will leave you alone." "That is a lot of money. I'm a family person," he said, shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Then I guess you better reach into your savings because a lawsuit will cost you a pretty penny," I said, repeating his words he said weeks prior to me in his fancy HOA office. Eric turned around and started walking away without saying anything, and I thought that meant that I was gonna pursue legal action. My plan was to win a case against him and then use the money to repay myself from the cost of getting my tractor back. However, the next morning, imagine my surprise when I woke up to the sound of a tow truck on my gravel driveway. I looked outside and saw my tractor. Upon investigation, Eric ended up paying the fees and organized the return of my tractor. He had paid all the costs to get his and his wife's car back too, multiple times. In the end, this taught him a lesson and more than likely hurt his bank account. He was still living in the HOA, but he has since left us alone and we have not been bothered by the HOA anymore. We had a fence installed that marks our property line and the HOA nor the HOA residents do not come near it anymore. We were civil with each other, but I was not going to go out of my way to be nice to him or the HOA members. Oh, and we still have our tractor, by the way. It is parked right in the spot by the shed still, big and visible from the frontage road. And yeah guys, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because that would help me tremendously. The next one is an absolutely insane story from r/relationship advice. It is titled, "My ex-girlfriend stole my emergency credit card and ran up a $3,000 bill. My ex and I broke up last year. She wanted to go out constantly and I didn't. Our lifestyles just were not compatible. She lived at my house and I did not make her pay anything as I make significantly more than her. What really sucked was that if she really wanted to, she could have essentially squatted in my house for months while I would have to file eviction papers. In the end, I paid for an apartment deposit and the first month's rent on a place for her. I had not spoken with her at all until a week ago when I got a collection notice in the mail. The credit card I literally don't use and only had for emergencies was maxed out and charged off. When I looked into it, I found it had been maxed out by March of this year. When I downloaded the statements, it is all fast food, Victoria's Secret and grocery stores. I also found the card was missing. I texted her asking about it and she called me and said that she did it because I left her with basically nothing and she needed back on her feet. She then said I was lucky she did not sue me for emotional distress. I hung up because she literally has sued coworkers twice and got settlements both times. I'm thinking of just going to the police and letting them deal with her. My credit score has dropped about 200 points in a year. Any other advice I might be missing? Edit, by the way, I filed a police report and I'm sending the information to the credit bureau tonight. There were a lot of questions about her previous lawsuits and well, one was for harassment and the other for sexual harassment. They were both iffy cases, but both businesses settled. I probably should have been watching my credit better. This was the first time in probably a year and a half that I even checked my credit. Relevant comments. Comment number 1. Collect as much evidence as you can and go straight to the police. OP responded, "Yeah, I just got back from the PD. Simple process. They say it happens a lot." Someone else said, "OP needs to get the report filed." And OP answered, "Yeah, I'm forwarding the report to all of the credit bureaus tonight." Update, I filed the report. I don't know if she's actually gonna try suing me. She's 2 for 2 on settlements. One was for workplace and the other for sexual harassment. Both cases were borderline, but the company settled in both. Commenter number 2, in addition to whatever else, start checking your credit card statements each month. OP answered, "Lesson learned here. I always ignored the emails along with the million others I get, and the address on the account was my old one from like 4 years ago. I heard back from the investigator on my case on Friday. He did a remarkable job from what it sounds like. She confessed to him that she only used my credit card for essentials and then said she also used it at Victoria's Secret. She was charged with felony credit card fraud and had to get a public defender. Since she's never been in legal trouble before, she's being offered 12 months probation. I also got an order of protection against her, which she did not even contest. The final ruling is supposed to go through at the start of January, but the investigator said it's basically a done deal. I'm alright with how it turned out, by the way. Probation is probably a pretty big deal for her. I know something like that would absolutely get me fired from my job and drastically alter my life. By the way, the charge-off was removed from my credit reports and my score is back above 760. I actually watch my credit now and I'll be keeping an eye on the public record for her court case just to be safe. I appreciate everyone's advice and encouragement. The next one is a revenge story. So my husband and I got married a year and a half ago, and when we got married I noticed from that point I've gained roughly 15-ish pounds. Nothing crazy, adding some hardly noticeable pudge around my tummy area. I didn't think too much of it. Now, I would jokingly, and he knows I'm joking, say that I'm gaining weight because I married him. I know that's not the case. The true culprit is a mix of cooking lots of yummy foods together, since we love cooking and trying new foods, and me switching to a new birth control method. Anyway, 6 months in, I'm changing into a tank top and some old short to go do some gardening, and these shorts, which used to fit me like a glove, now barely zipper up and leave me with a tiny muffin top. Naturally, I pout at the realization, turn to my husband and show him. He gets a deer in the headlights look as he realizes my dilemma, as his brain struggles to think of the least offensive response. Husband, maybe you should work out or something? We both had a good chuckle at that, and it did motivate me to put some more effort in. I have not dropped the weight, but I haven't gained any more, and I'm good with my body image. But last night came my revenge. Hubby comes out of our walk-in closet with an armload of pants and throws them on the bed. Husband, they don't fit. Me, how? Are they too short? Husband, they are too tight around the waist. I held on to them to see if they would fit again, but they still don't, so me, a grin breaks across my face as I look up at him from my computer. Maybe you should work out. He looked at me for a second and then he remembered, tried not to smile and muttered a snickering, "Oh my god," as he rolled his eyes and left me to deal with the pants. I made sure to give him half my cheesecake slice later. And the next one is another revenge story. I'm a professional driver, and as such, on the roads in the US there are different truck stops throughout the country that have a pay-to-park system. Usually about 10 to 20% of the lot marked off as reserved, with each space running from $15 to $25. And damn, parking in the US is not cheap. Anyway, the truck stop where this took place had parking for $17, which is relatively cheap for a guaranteed spot. The spots are reserved for 24 hours starting at 4 PM local time and extending to 3 PM the following afternoon. I knew that I would have a late night delivery, so I came to the truck stop around 3:30 and paid for a reserved spot. I told the manager on duty that I had a delivery up the road that night and would be back and once delivery was completed, but should still be able to clear out the spot by the next afternoon today. She told me that this was okay and she would mark the spot as sold when I left, and that way, if someone else comes in trying to reserve that spot, she would consult her notes and then deny the sale. 11:15 PM rolls around, I take off for my delivery. I don't get out of that facility until 2:30 AM the next morning, so I groggily drive back to the truck stop to reclaim my paid-for spot. Only to find that the reserved parking spaces are all full. I then call the manager on duty, and after giving her my info, I inform her that all the spots are full and that someone has parked in a spot and has not paid for it. She sends her other employee out to start checking trucks. The culprit was from a company that is known for their bright orange trailers, and he was a company driver. The other employee starts banging on his door to inform him that he is parked illegally and he has to move. Meanwhile, I can see the commotion from my mirror with my vantage point in the fuel island where I had been instructed to temporarily park. The driver answers the door with a bottle of Heineken in one hand and some sort of smoking implement in another. I know what it is, but for the sake of the mods I'm not gonna say it. So I decided to roll down the window to hear the commotion, and I hear the employee tell the driver to either move or he will get the towing company and police involved. This driver is flat out irate that someone had the audacity to tell him where he can and cannot park, so he slams the door on the employee, threatening him. Employee calls the police and tow company, and the police show up first. I had worked for this company before, so I know their policies and more importantly what they can and cannot have in their trucks. Alcoholic beverages are not allowed in the cab, anything that's not a cigarette or a cigar and a lighter also not allowed. The coup de grace, a pew-pew of any kind, absolutely not allowed, and especially not allowed loaded. This driver had all that and some other not so legal substances in his cab, so he was hauled away in handcuffs. His truck was hauled away on a wrecker. I made a call after the commotion died down to the company's safety director and informed them that their rig will be in an impound lot and their driver is going to jail over the not so legal stuff he had in his truck. She thanked me and said that he will definitely lose his job, especially over the alcohol and the other not so legal stuff. I guess he played the screw around and find out card and it bit him in his career. And the next one is another revenge story. OP has a real estate business, often buys land or an old house and then improves and sells it. Occasionally, she leases a place, improves and then subleases it. And by the way, Ripe Stars, if you're confused about this, OP is basically telling this story from the perspective of someone else because it is not her own story. She's essentially talking about someone else getting revenge. Either way, this person found an old shabby house but at a great location online, so she contacted the agent and offered to buy it, but the agent said the owner only wants to lease it. They agreed to make a lease contract that has to be renewed every 3 years and negotiate a date to sign it. However, OP has to go abroad for some time before they'll be able to meet and sign a contract, so the agent asks for a deposit for about $1,800. OP agrees, and one day after the deposit is transferred, the agent deletes all her posts on the website, blocks OP's number, and leaves the chat in line, which is similar to WhatsApp. OP collects all the chat logs and transfers the paper and then goes to the police. They said they cannot do anything since it is a civil case, despite OP's protest that this is fraud, hence a criminal case. Without the police's paper, OP cannot go to the bank and has that agent's account suspended. Instead, she consults a law firm, which also has a private investigation service. For about $75, the investigator gives OP the agent's real phone number, legal address, her license plate, the company name and address which she works for, list of her relatives and their phone number, and also their address. And the lawyer at the firm writes a letter that states OP is gonna sue her for criminal case and send it to her legal address. OP then spends another $150 to hire an investigator to find out where she actually lives and keeps an eye on her for information such as who she lives with and her daily routine. After finding out that she only lives on her own, OP goes to her house to confront her and ask for the money back. She said she doesn't have it now and will transfer it back later. OP then proceeds to tell her that in case that she, OP, wants her agent to contact her agent's boss to guarantee that OP will get her money back. She refuses to let anyone at the company know about this. Instead, she transfers $900 back to OP via mobile phone at that moment and said she will transfer the rest at the end of the month. OP said that that is unacceptable and that she will contact her parents and then show the info she has on her. The agent was beyond shock and tells OP that her parents had mentioned a letter from the law firm, but they didn't open it. The agent then begins to weep and cry and beg for her mercy and promise for her money at the end of the month. OP agrees and then said she changes her number and asks for her agent's phone so OP could save her, OP's number, into her agent's phone. When the agent hands OP the phone, it was an iPhone, OP says she will keep it and only give it back when she gets the money at the end of the month. Also, the remaining balance is not $900 but $1,125, for she had to hire a private investigator to get to her. However, she gives her back her SIM card. OP says if she goes to the police about the phone or she does not receive the money, she will contact her company and her parents and then take her to criminal court. At the end of the month, OP receives the money, but she contacts her company anyway to make sure that she couldn't find a job in real estate anymore. The agent calls OP and berates her for her dishonesty, as she did everything she was told to do, but OP still contacted the company. OP said to her that honesty is not for a thief. By the way, about the contact parents part, in my country, we care a lot about how our parents think of us. And yes, I'm Asian. And by the way, guys, I gotta say, this story sounds a lot like it happened in Thailand. Especially when OP talked about getting money transferred via a cell phone. That sounds a lot like Thailand because actually when it comes to payments and banks and everything, Thailand is extremely modern. It doesn't matter what you pay for, even if you buy a coffee for a few cents or something, you can send that person the money via an iPhone app, or Android app, I guess. The money ends up on the account of the other person in seconds and it is extremely convenient. However, then again, I guess other Asian countries have similar systems, especially India, so I'm not exactly sure where OP is really from. And now we will read one last petty revenge story to end the video. It is titled, She Made My Hands Freeze. So early February last year, my partner and I traveled to Japan, which was winter season. Midway through our trip, one morning, we woke up to the aftermath of what was an overnight snowstorm. Excited, we both ran outside, danced in the snow, and posed for photos. One photo, my partner asked me to pose for what was me holding a snowball. Naive me, thinking it was a quick 5-second photo, photo opportunity obliged. However, she was taking her time rotating the phone and telling me to hold still, and after the snow started to attack my hands with frozen temperature spells, I started asking, "Are you done yet?" And my partner responds with evil grins and laughs, before I realized what she was doing and dropped the pile of snow in defeat, while she laughed and pat herself on the back for a prank well done. Well, fast forward to last month, December, we are back in Japan, the same town, and we are both just walking along the streets and admiring the Christmas and New Year's decorations. I'm basking in the views when my partner calls out, "Hey, look, photo please!" I turn around and there she is, smiling, holding a pile of snow. I pull my phone out and before I even do anything, my brain flashbacks to that awful minute in February 2024 when my hands were wronged and how this was an amazing opportunity for justice. So I aim the camera at her, rotate the angle and say, "Hold still for just a bit longer. Let me get this angle right. Damn, the brightness of the snow. Let me adjust that." My partner is looking at me dumbfounded, wondering why I'm taking so long for what she thought was a simple 5-second photo, until she spots the devilish grin on my face and then the penny dropped. Did you just seriously wait 10 months to get back at me for that? Me just grinning. For the rest of the afternoon, she was in disbelief at how I still remembered what she did 10 months later and how I got back at her. But my hands got their sweet cold justice. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.